What high school prank made you realize, oh, we went too far? So the senior class 2 years ahead of me forked the lawn in front of the school. That's a classic, right? Well, they took it a bit further. Instead of buying plastic forks in bulk, the seniors, for their whole school year, methodically pocketed the metal silverware for lunch and breakfast. Not every piece every time, but just enough that the lunch staff would think it was accidental loss. We have a small class size, so kids would bust their own trays by dumping the scraps into a big trash can, and sometimes people would forget to take their silverware off first and they'd get lost. We had regular announcements at lunch reminding us to make sure we didn't throw away the utensils. So in this massive conspiracy that only they knew about, they collected hundreds of metal utensils. The night before their last day of classes, they snuck into the school grounds and methodically stuck hundreds of forks, knives, and spoons into the grass a foot apart each. To make it worse, one of the two custodians had recently been fired, and the remaining custodian was an older guy who was perfectly kind and in an ideal world should have retired sooner. He had to pick them all up by himself. I heard one of the teachers came in early and helped him a little bit, and saw the custodian had tears falling down his cheeks. Spraying people with Nair hair remover. A group of kids staged a kidnapping one time. They borrowed a van and drove it in front of a busy shopping center. One guy, pretending to escape, jumped out the trunk all wrapped up in duct tape. To the horror of all the bystanders, the van stopped, two kids ran out and recaptured the escapee, and drove off. The cops had to go to their homes when the van was identified, and they had a lot of clearing up to do. Had a mate in a neck brace for a year because he and another mate would frequently push each other into things like walls, railings, and other things as a joke. The other mate decided to one-up him by pushing him down a flight of stairs. Okay, did the person who pushed him win that particular prank war or lose it? It kind of feels like he achieved the greatest amount of effect with his shove, so maybe he'd call it a victory, but let's not have a sequel to that. A kid decided to post on Facebook that he had a piece and he was going to go out in a blaze of glory at the school the next day. Then he didn't show up. The lockdown lasted 6 hours past the final bell, until they found this kid who wasn't actually packing heat. When I was a freshman, there was a tree that was planted when the school was founded. The seniors destroyed it and everyone was really angry at them. There was legend in my school of a senior class, before I was a freshman, who had dumped whole buckets of crickets into all of the school's garbage cans. Fast forward, and a fight broke out at lunch, and a student was knocked into one of the garbage cans, and thousands of crickets spilled onto the concourse, causing a massive riot. I'm talking about mobs of kids leaving the school. The school was infested with crickets for years. At my high school, when I was a freshman, a group of seniors had broken into the school the night before, with hundreds of bottles of lubricant to grease up all of the staircases in the school. Like 15 kids went to the hospital. One kid cracked his head open and had to be rushed to the ER. A guy in my school had a crummy old car that the lock was broken on and could easily be put in neutral and pushed around. The steering still locked, so mostly kids would push it into a parking space ahead or behind of it. One day they pushed it and it got away from them and it damaged a teacher's car. The kids owned up to it, but considering the owner was so sick of his car being messed with, he called the police. Turns out moving a car a few meters is considered vehicle theft around here, and 3 kids were charged and expelled. Someone let a greased pig loose in the school. It basically ran around and was pretty funny. The teachers did try to catch him, but basically they opened doors and figured the pig would run outside. The janitor went full caveman and killed the pig with a broken broom handle. Blood all over the floor. The janitor was fired that day. This is around a week after the Parkland shooting in Florida. Some freshmen thought it would be a cool idea to bring in a BB pistol during school hours. All the staff thought he was an actual school shooter, and there were lockdowns with everyone ready to throw some heavy books at the first person who came into their rooms. This kid got expelled, and some say that he got sent to juvie. I should have probably provided more context. The guy was planning to play a prank on a friend of his by pulling out said piece. And that's how I spent 3 hours in my chem class panicking. Also, how the staff realized. A year before I transferred to a school, I learned that some seniors greased the steps with baby oil, causing students to slip and fall, including teachers, one of whom was several months pregnant. The principal ordered that they do not get to walk for graduation. There was this whole mess with the parents fighting to get the punishment overturned. Some of the students got punished and others got to walk for graduation. The parents were like, "No one got seriously hurt and it was just a prank." But seriously? At high school, someone in my year group decided it would be funny to run and tackle a bin that was leaning on a pole. He then pretended to be unconscious, and as the group of students watched on, rumors started to go around that he had jumped off the second-story walkway and tackled the pole in midair, and then fallen to the ground. He continued to pretend to be unconscious, and as soon as the ambulance arrived to check on his injuries, he suddenly jumped off and ran into the distance and out of the school. Seniors in my school locked all of the exits with bike locks and pulled the fire alarm. They were charged. A guy in my class put a tack on a chair like in old cartoons. When a classmate sat in said chair, it was not funny. A couple of underclassmen crashed a wholesome senior prank and ruined it. The original prank was spray painting the graduating class year all over the building in washable paint, but these kids came by after they were done and did swears and slurs. The graduating class almost didn't walk until parents kept complaining that their kid or kids weren't at fault. They ended up having to do whatever they did to cover up the writings, and there was still a pillar with a Johnson on it a few weeks afterwards. When I was a freshman, the senior prank was releasing farm animals into the school. A couple had to be put down because of injuries they sustained while running loose. And my senior year, someone crapped on the cafeteria floor and then surrounded it with some sort of clear oil. One of the janitors got hurt trying to clean it up. I'm all for funny pranks, but this was just vandalism and cruelty. In my senior year, my genius classmates thought it would be a good idea to take all of the books out of the library and make a giant book mountain. Needless to say, we spent about 7 hours learning the Dewey Decimal System. I was livid when the administration forced our whole class to resort the books, even though it was 3 idiots who made the whole mess. Someone bought multiple bottles of this stuff called Liquid ASS and absolutely poured like 10 bottles of the stuff in the men's restroom. It was truly the smell of putrid, rotting, dead elephant doo-doo. It was horrendous. If I smelled a dead body, it would be the second worst thing I've ever smelled. It was that bad. Our poor janitor was assigned to clean it up, so he walked in and immediately projectile chucked all over the bathroom and quit the job on the spot. We were now out a janitor, and the mess now had the addition of his stomach contents on top of 10 bottles of liquid butt. It took a while to find a new janitor, so the vom just sort of sat there for a week and was basically a biohazard at that point. The new janitor eventually cleaned the mess in a full bodysuit, but even after bleaching everything, we could still smell it for over 6 months. They had to permanently remove the front door to that bathroom. The narrator is mildly curious about how bad this stuff could really smell, but there were multiple follow-on comments about how this particular product has resulted in expulsions and entire areas of schools being condemned. So I guess it must be pretty bad. And having just checked online, I can see that it's still being sold despite all of this. During one of my siblings' tenure, a few students broke into the gymnasium and turned hoses onto the basketball court. Completely ruined everything as it ran a good part of the night. I believe they caught and expelled all of them. And my class had a few people superglue as many door locks as they could reach. That really made everyone happy. Why the old carry the teacher's Volkswagen into the quad prank that at least only caused some inconvenience and not property damage became a thing of the past, I'll never know. Someone shot out a bunch of windows at my high school. Much more aggressive than the staircase covered in little cups of water. Someone put a couple of dead fish in the laundry dryer at my boarding school. Also had a 3-year string of phantom poopers who would just take random number 2s in places like corridors, urinals, and other things. Must have been different people because you can only be there for 2 years at a time. Most people do 1. Someone put their own number 2 under a teacher's desk. For mine, a guy found a dead pigeon and the class decided it would be fun to hide it inside a hardcover folder that a teacher left on her desk. The only problem was that the pigeon would bulge the folder, so they had no better idea than to put it inside and then stomp the folder, and by extension pigeon, flat. When the teacher, who was preggers at the time, opened the folder, she yelled in terror and fainted. They took her out to an ambulance, and on the next day, the principal informed the class that the teacher lost the baby, and that they were lucky if she didn't press any charges. Needless to say, they never told anyone whose idea it was or who participated in the prank. I wouldn't really call this a prank, but a kid once wrote the name of another kid in his own number 2 on the toilet wall. This was a fate worse than death for the unsuspecting victim. Cries of derision could be heard throughout the building, malicious rumors were spread for weeks. The poor kid was subjected to a social death sentence. A dead man walking. It wasn't until a fateful rainy Thursday afternoon, after PE, that the wrongly accused was exonerated when the real crapasso fell victim to his own hubris and was caught brown-handed in the act of fecal graffiti. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out Easy Mode, also linked below, and subscribe. Someone slipped Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds into a teacher's coffee. He was tripping. I think back on it now and I feel sad for him. I broke into my friend's middle school email account in the middle of the night to send his current email address a message from the future. The message was inspired by that one prank from The Office where Jim sends Dwight faxes from the future about the coffee being poisoned. My dumb butt took it one step further and said that my friend needed to stop me and my other friend from playing the piano at break, as otherwise a bomb would go off. My friend took this seriously and alerted a teacher, who immediately knew it was me. Yes, the police were called and my butt was nearly suspended, and I was grounded for a month by my parents. Going back about 15 years ago, a group of 10 to 13 senior kids decided to try and raid our community school and literally rip off all the tube lights, bending all the ceiling fans, smash some walls, among other things. There was quite a substantial amount of damage. At the time, CCTVs weren't all that famous or used, so it was difficult to identify. But luckily, there were some eyewitnesses, and the boys and their parents were immediately summoned. Kids were suspended, and parents were asked to foot the bill. Oh, and the kids were named and shamed in front of the whole community. One guy from my school sprayed some pepper spray in the air during class because he thought it'd only make everyone's eyes sting a bit. Ended up with some students almost suffocating to death, the whole floor getting evacuated, and the guy getting expelled. This was actually in middle school. The bathrooms had particularly low ceilings. One day, some kids went into the girls' bathroom during class time, I guess when the least amount of people would be in there, and somehow managed to get a chair up into the ceiling tiles. Many girls knew they did this, and we all thought it was pretty funny. We forgot about the chair for about a week until it came crashing down onto a girl who was using the loo. This girl was very frail and super underweight. It came down and knocked her out. The school went on lockdown while the paramedics took her to the hospital. Luckily, she was fine. They locked the bathrooms the rest of the year and only opened them between classes. Many kids would go to the nurse to use the bathroom when they couldn't hold it in class. They put toilet paper in every tree. It's been 2 years and the toilet paper is still there in some trees. Some guys thought it would be funny to put a 6-pack of beer and a doobie in my trombone case during class. Fricking everyone saw them do it, but I got caught with it. A guy at my school broke into the teacher's lounge and microwaved ghost pepper popcorn. They thought it would just make everyone's eyes water a little bit. They basically maced everyone in the tiny compact hallway that the teacher's lounge was in. The school has no idea who did it, but classes in that hallway had to be relocated. This all happened a couple of years before I started high school, but someone released thousands of crickets into the building. They're still in the air ducts and we can't get them out. All of the air vents have been locked shut until a solution is found. What is it with this particular prank that's made it come up more than one time? Where do people buy all these living invertebrates from? Is it a freaking bait and tackle shop that's just doing the motherlode of all business one time a year? What a prank to pull, decimating your school for years to come. Maybe not the coolest move, guys. For a senior prank at my high school, a group of kids stole a ton, if not all, of the bathroom stall doors. While the administration was trying to figure out who did it or how to replace all the missing doors, they had makeshift plywood doors installed. They eventually caught the kids who did it and formally charged them with theft and a few other things. It was pretty genius, though. To pay the legal fees, the kids got a crap load of t-shirts printed with the phrase, "I prefer the plywood," and most of the school bought them in solidarity. So all in all, kind of a heartwarming ending to a too far situation. In my brother's school about 10 years ago, apparently these seniors tried to prank their teacher by putting 3 pills for male performance in his coffee. Legend has it he taught with a chair blocking his groin the entire time. During every winter, this giant flock of seagulls would always show up at my high school and hang out around campus until springtime. The majority of students ate lunch outside in this huge central courtyard. The seagulls were so annoying and constantly hovering and pretty much begging for food. It was also common to get your food stolen by one if you weren't looking. One day, a fellow student had some string in his backpack. So he took 6 feet or so of string, tied a bite-sized piece of pizza to one end and an empty 20-ounce soda bottle to the other. We then proceeded to throw the contraption into a group of seagulls. We never thought they'd fall for it. One seagull swallowed the pizza and started to fly across campus with the string and bottle floating behind him, hanging from his beak. The rest of the seagulls freaked out and were flying behind him as if they were chasing him. The funniest part was that a random female student looked up, saw what she believed to be a floating empty soda bottle and screamed in horror, "Oh my god, that bottle is floating!" The seagull then voided its stomach of the pizza string contraption and went about his life unharmed. We felt really bad after that and decided to not prank the seagulls anymore. As an update, a few days later, some younger kids, freshmen, tried to mimic our little prank, except it all went wrong for them. The seagull fell for the bait, but ended up getting caught in a tree. The freshmen then started to panic, fearing they'd be in trouble if caught, and had to boost each other up to free the seagull from the tree. The seagull was fine and flew away, but after that, the pranking of seagulls came to an official end. Seniors killed a deer, stuffed it in a hockey bag, and dumped the carcass in the stairwell. Some seniors came in at night and moved all the desks and whiteboards so the classrooms were now set up outside. School was outside the next day. The school made them clean up at the end of the day, and they repeated the same prank 5 more times. My old high school had a rivalry with another one in the same district. Years ago, the football teams would play pranks on each other. They escalated to the point of the other high school killing a black cat and hanging it from a tree at our school. Our mascot was panthers. Someone placed posters of anime tentacle material around the school in various locations. A separate group of guys took everything out of a classroom and put it all on the roof. The school didn't tolerate end-of-year pranks after that. I coated my desk with hand sanitizer and set it on fire, and told my teacher my desk was doing that thing again. A girl a year or 2 above me sent this kid in my year a photo of her in a state of undress, and not just a regular one. She was putting her fist inside herself. He sent it around to everyone and someone printed it off hundreds of times and put it up all around the school. Not necessarily a school prank, but childish nonetheless. I was in the car business and a couple of guys went back and forth pranking each other's cars. I don't remember the second to last move, but the final one was a little over the top in my opinion. The finisher decided he'd had enough and removed the metal bottom door plate on an older car and lined the underneath with sardines. Once he screwed the plate back on, no one could figure out where that stink was coming from. We didn't all hear until later what he actually did, but the guy he did it to ended up selling his car at a loss because he couldn't get rid of the smell. I had friends that would dry dock and upper deck. Dry docking is flushing all of the water out of the commode by turning the water off. Proceed to take a nasty number 2 without water. It's an awful cleanup. Upper decking is removing the top of the toilet, going number 2 in the upper tank, and waiting for someone to discover it. Yeah, my friends are jerks. The kids at my school nominated the weird homely girl for prom queen. When I was a freshman, the seniors hung up a blacklist everywhere in the building, which depicted all the people, mostly freshmen, they hated for no specific reason. On their last day, all of them were completely wasted. They started chasing all the people whose names and pics were on the blacklist, tied them up and brought them to the stage, while the rest of the school sat downstairs, being the audience. They embarrassed these people on the stage. They poured water over them and pushed their wet heads into flour and other stuff that got sticky with the water. Some of the victims got over it fast and laughed about it later, while some broke down crying, not ever wanting to go back to school again. Later, we all had to talk to our teachers about this and tell them how we felt about it. I wasn't on that blacklist, but I knew some of the students who were. It didn't seem like it was about fun anymore. By the time I was a senior, we weren't allowed to do anything of the sort anymore, so we just threw some water balloons at the other kids. It was a hot summer's day, so everyone actually liked it. My brother's senior class decided it'd be a fun prank to break into school in the middle of the night. They put dead fish in lockers, shaving cream all down the halls, and broke into the main office and smashed some computers. They then egged the outside for good measure. That hallway smelled like crap for a good month afterwards. None of them faced any legal consequences because one of the kids' dads is a lawyer, but I think they lost their scholarships. Someone took all of the books out of the library and set them outside. The librarians had to spend the next few days trying to reshelve every single book. I don't know what my class did, but the class above me ran down the halls and sprayed either skunk or liquid butt everywhere. The dumb part was, they still had to go to class like the rest of us, so they had to smell that gosh-awful smell the whole day like everyone else. People gagged, some threw up. It was awful. These D-bags wanted to trick a girl who was in the special ed class to go with them to prom only to stand her up. Thankfully, it was stopped before it actually happened, but that still makes me angry to this day. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all the stories, or if you want some vibey music to put on in the background, check out Easy Mode. If you like Am I the Genius, give Am I the Jerk a shot. Everything linked in the description.